So exciting. I want to introduce to you a few folks that are around the table, and we just want to talk a little bit today. We've had a bunch of input last night, and we'll have a lot more all through the day today. We've got a whole album to record tonight, so there's a lot of day coming today, so I hope you're up for that and all God is going to do. But I want to just have a chance for us to talk together. We don't know a lot about a lot, just to be really honest with you, and I know people always say that, and you're like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, you know. But we really are a young church. We're an emerging community of faith. Passion City Church is really only 2 years in this building that you're sitting in, and we were homeless before that for 2 years, bouncing around the city in different venues, kind of meeting sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes only at night, sometimes not for the whole summer. We really had a kind of herky-jerky start, but we're kind of getting our stride a little bit right now, but we're still learning way more than anything else. But we just thought we'd share, kind of what we're learning, I think, with you guys, and hopefully that will inspire and encourage you some ways. At the end of the table down there, if you didn't know already, is the better half of the Giglio clan. Say hi and good morning to Shelly Giglio. Oh, she's better looking than that, people. Come on. Shelly heads up our label, if you didn't know that, Six Steps Records. She manages our artists on that label. She's also chief strategist of most everything we do, and so awesome. Next to her is Matt Gilder. He, if you haven't noticed, been sort of holding it down up here for the last couple of sessions, and he's the glue that makes it all work and everything. Did you guys feel that nice little transition that happened when Brad came out to host just now? Did anybody feel that, or did that go? Some of you noticed that? Thank you so much. One person noticed that. Matt, so way to go. Most people don't notice what Matt Gilder does, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but when Matt Gilder isn't doing what Matt Gilder does, everybody knows Matt Gilder is not doing what Matt Gilder does. So it's pretty amazing what he does. This is Miss Christy Knuckles right in the middle. Extraordinaire. So excited. You're going to get to hear a lot more from Matt and from Christy a little bit later today. This is one of our young worship leaders that we're raising up right here, Mr. Chris Tomlin. So not a lot of you will have some tips and encouragement for him through the weekend. I'm sure you already do. So please, there's a little box in the lobby, out in the oval out there. It tips for Chris. It's so great having you at the table today. And you probably don't know this guy right here. This is Jonathan Sheehan. And nothing works at our house without Jonathan Sheehan. Do you have one of those at your house? Like one of those guys in your church that if like he's not there or she's not there, it's just not happening? That's Jonathan Sheehan. And he is right now currently sort of the genius behind all the production that you see everywhere at Lyft, but he's also the director of all the Passion events as well. And did that miraculous thing, Jonathan, of turning a football game at midnight in the Georgia Dome into what a lot of us experienced at 7 p.m. the next night in the same building. No, we're not going to do that. This was a superhuman, can't happen. They almost wouldn't let us do Passion 2013 in the Dome once they understood what had to go out of there at midnight and what had to come in there by 7 o'clock. When they got their heads around it at the Dome, they said, no, we're not doing this. You're not starting on January 1st. And Jonathan said, we're going to pull it off. And he did pull it off. His team pulled it off. It's pretty amazing and incredible. So cool. Last night we talked about how we're trying to lead people to encounters with Jesus. Actually trying to do that this morning. Chris, you did such a great job with that, and the whole team this morning. I'm not just going down through the set list, but there were those moments. Anybody have that moment today where a little space was created and you could connect with Jesus? And that's such a powerful thought for all of us in our house. But I love that we've sort of gathered around this one phrase that we keep saying a lot around here, and that is that our lead story, Jonathan, is what?
Jesus is alive.
That Jesus is alive. That's our lead story. And do you know why we have a lead story? Is because vision has a short shelf life. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? So you get your team together and you cast this monster vision and you're so excited about it, and then 3 weeks later, everybody's right back where they were, or a couple of steps behind where they were, and you're like, what about the big vision we cast? And they're like, what vision? And you go, oh, okay, I have to do that again. So here's our vision. And then the next day, what do? Here's the vision. The next day, if you're a leader, your primary job is to cast vision. And you cast vision all day long, every single day, because vision has a really short shelf life. And you can't just put it out there today and assume everybody's going to grab that and still be breathing that 6 months from now. You have to continually be setting the vision in front of people for where we're going. That's a large part of my job, and my responsibility as a leader is to cast vision and to not get tired of hearing myself cast the vision. And one of the things that we learned early on at Passion City Church is that a lot of things can grab the headline. Like, what's the headline of your church right now? I want you to think about it. If the newsletter, not the real newsletter if you have one of those still, but if the newsletter or the newspaper of your church was printed today, what would the headline be? And for a lot of us, you understand the reality, there are always things trying to grab the headline. So we decided we're going to grab the headline, and we're going to write the headline every single day, and every single time we come together, we're going to write the headline of our church. And it's not that the ladies' class with the little embroidered, covers on the back of the chairs, that some of the youth came in there during the youth weekend, and the chairs didn't get put back in the right order, and therefore we're calling in the youth staff and having a meeting, and the deacons are here, and somebody's losing their job. It's hard to fire somebody not getting paid, but we're going to do that. We're going to let you go, and that's kind of like the lead story of the day today. Everybody's talking about it all over the building. And I'm not making a dumb example, but that might be real for somebody here. We've decided we want to grab the headline, and the headline of Passion City Church is Jesus is alive. Yes, maybe the chairs didn't get put back right, and we'll work on that, but that's not the lead story. That's on page 19 under the advertisement for LA Fitness, and it's in there. It's down there at the bottom. Get the chairs put back right, and next time let's put the little slip covers back on the chairs the way they came from, but that's not the headline. The headline is Jesus is alive, and that's the lead story of Passion City Church. We got a byline under that, so nobody can steal the byline either. The byline under that is the Holy Spirit is here. That's our byline. The Holy Spirit is here. He is in our midst, and we have another byline under that. So we're claiming the top three lines. We're claiming the headline, the byline. So remind me, Jonathan. It's
Jesus is alive. The Holy Spirit is here, and people's lives are being wrecked for His glory.
People's lives are being wrecked for His glory. There's always somebody who's not happy about something that's going on, but always on the other side of the row is somebody whose life is totally being wrecked by the power of God's Spirit and what He's doing in their lives. And those have to continually be the headlines of what we're about. We talk about that all the time. I mean, all the time. Somebody's got to have a microphone ready to go here, but we talk about that all the time, right?
We talk about it all the time.
Like, how we talk about that all the time?
Well, we talk about it all the time in that we don't just tell that story from the stage, but we tell that story in our gatherings of any type. So if we have community group gatherings, for instance, every time we meet for community groups around here, which are our small groups that aren't that small but are great, we always tell Jesus stories every single time, because what it does for us is it reminds us what the main line is, right? It reminds us of the main story. And then what it also does for us is it encourages our faith. Because we start hearing about Jesus working in other people's lives, and when we hear that, it spurs us on. Something inside of us grows because of what we hear about somebody else. And so every time we meet, whether we're meeting in the green room before we come out here and lead our gathering times, or whether we're meeting in community groups, we're always in a position where we want to hear stories about Jesus. And it helps us keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Baptism Sunday, when we're all getting to stand up here and we're getting to hear, the lowercase s stories, but it's because of the capital S story that's the main headline. And we're always standing over here wiping tears away, and getting to hear that is just wrecking us all over again. But that's what happens when that's your headline. When it's something else, you don't get to hear the repercussions of that. But when it is the main thing, we just are just in disbelief on Baptism Sunday. It's always the funnest because you're just hearing it trickle all the way down, and not only to those people, but their family is sitting out there. And then a couple of weeks later, we're in the green room, we're hearing, well, they came to Jesus because of their story being shared during Baptism Sunday, and it just goes on and on. It's amazing.
I think it's what you've really set the vision for is leading, always being connected. And I think when you're always connected to Jesus at every moment, it's different than it's what we don't want is I'm connected to Jesus during my 20-minute set. And that's when I'm really focused and I'm really thinking about it. Other than that, I'm just kind of hanging out, just goofing around. But I mean, when you're in the car headed here in the mornings, that's a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm always like, and it's amazing what, even as a worship leader, what God will give you. You feel like you're prepared, but then just in prayer time in the green room, I mean, Louis is always like, everybody better be prepared for something. You might need to bring something. And Louis will sometimes just call on some person that I didn't know talked. And I didn't know they had a voice. I've never heard them speak. And he'll just say, what do you got today? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awkward. And it is. But it's awesome because it's kind of showing people, man, you've got to be connected. Everybody's bringing something. It's not just your moment of 20 minutes on a stage, but that's just the overflow of like what you're bringing, staying connected, and with Jesus being the lead,
I love that. I think that we didn't talk about this earlier, but that little phrase, always be prepared. It comes out of the connectedness with Jesus, and that's a beautiful thing. There's a guy named...
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure you use that phrase because I've been unprepared several times. So it's become our mantra now, be prepared.
Well, it's like, I always like to give props to this guy. He's one of my heroes in life, and he's not somebody that everybody knows who he is unless you're in this certain culture. But there's a guy named Chris Mendez, who's a pastor of a church in Australia. And he's not the pastor, but he's one of the pastors. And when I first went to an event there, he was my host. This was about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, he drove me everywhere we went, walked with me everywhere we went, sat with me everywhere we sat. And as we kind of spent these 4 or 5 days together, the thing that blew me away about him, because in their culture, somebody did the hosting, somebody would come around and share when the giving time came, somebody would do the response at the end of the message, and there was all these different little roles that happened. And I asked him some point, I said, do you do the whatever? And he goes, I've done it once. I was like, once? I mean, like, you're not a powerhouse. I've been driving around in a car with you for 4 days. You ought to be, like, leading something. What do you mean? He said, yeah, I've done that once, and I've done this once, and I've done that once. And he does a whole lot more now. But he said, but you know what's really weird about it? He goes, I've been prepared to do it every single Sunday. He said, every single Sunday I come through the door, and if they look at me and say, you're doing the giving today, I'm going to go, okay, I'm ready. But they don't. They didn't, and 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 they didn't. But the time they did, I was ready. I'm riding in the car, and I'm sitting over in my seat going, are you kidding me? This is so anti-humanity. Humanity's like, if you call me a week in advance and tell me what you want me to do, I'll change my schedule, adjust everything, try to be there, and I'll have something, versus I have something all the time. I'm just carrying something all the time, just in case God calls on me to step into a moment. And at your place, I think a lot of you are saying, hey, I've never been asked to do that. Well, that's great. What if you did get asked, though? It'd be awesome if you were ready, though, wouldn't it? It'd be so awesome if you were ready. And here's what he said. This is what changed the trajectory of my heart, sitting in that car. He said, what it's done for me to be prepared every week is probably greater than what it would have done for anybody else if they'd ever called on me in the first place. And I'm thinking, man, what if you had a giving talk every week? You'd probably turn into a really good giver, whether or not you ever gave the giving talk or not. And some of you are waiting to lead in your setting, and so just be ready to lead every week, and then what it's going to do in you is probably way more than what it's going to do in the other people. But we talk about that in our green room some. In fact, I don't know, every other week or so, somebody's in there going, hey, good morning, everybody, how you doing? What's our lead story today? Jesus is alive. Yes, that's the lead story. Not that my car is on the side of the freeway back here because I had a flat tire on the way. That is a story, and it is on page 4, and I do have to go get my car at some point. But it's not the lead story today. That's all part of culture, isn't it? And we talk a lot about culture. Why do we talk so much about culture?
Culture is so important to what we do, and it comes out in several different ways, but really, it's when you have a whole church of people that, some of them have been in different churches. A lot of times people come from different churches or have different trajectories on life whenever they're getting here, and just to be able to have, we're a house, and we're not somebody else's house, but we're the house that God's called us to be. And so it's really important for us to say, well, God, what have you called us to be? And then how are we going to build into that? And not just let someone else shape that culture, not let whatever someone rolls in the door with shape that culture, but how are we going to shape our culture? Language is really important in that for us, because just trying to be a place that's different and a place that whenever people say something, it has meaning. So we don't say the word, we're going to take the offering, for instance, because we don't really want to take anything from anyone. We want it to have a giving time.
What do you mean you don't take the offering? We've taken the offering since we were born, Jonathan. You can't not take the offering. That's what we've done since. How many of you have taken the offering since you were born? Literally in the maternity ward, they came around to the little thing that you were in and said, it's time to take the offering. That's just what we've done our whole life. What are you talking about? You're changing the world.
Exactly. We're changing the word because we want to change the way people think about it. Because God isn't here to take anything from us. God gave something to us, and so therefore we want to give back to them. So that's just it's a philosophical small thing, but it comes out in our language. Same thing that we say we don't have services, because who wants to come to a service? That sounds kind of, really?
Apparently a lot of people do.
So we say we have gatherings, because people gather, the church gathers, so we have gatherings. So it's funny, even in our team meetings sometimes, somebody will say, well, in the service last week, and somebody else will pipe up across the room and go, it's gathering, not service. Because we're just, even us, we still kind of slip up a little bit, but we're trying to be really intentional about that every time that we meet and every time we talk about what's going on in the house.
What are some other ways language kind of plays into our culture?
Yeah, I think if I'm going to be honest, when I first heard us start talking about culture, I was like, well, what does that really mean? We all grew up in church. What's going on? But everybody, you guys, this church, every house that you go back to has a culture, whether you've been intentional about, or whether we've been intentional about creating it or not, it has a culture. When I wrapped my mind around that, then some of the words started to make a lot more sense. I don't have another one of those words right now. Help me out.
I'll tell you a word. It's door holding instead of volunteering.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's just a really subtle thing, but it makes a big difference, I think, in what is communicated and the way that we take our positions. And every one of us consider ourselves door holders. We don't have stage people and then door holding people. We're all door holding. And we're doing it in whatever role we're in, but it's really important to us that we say the word door holding. And the reason is because we believe that there's a verse in Psalm 84:10 that talks about that you would rather be a door holder in the house of God than to dwell in the tents of the wicked. In other words, to have everything everyone else has. You would really actually rather serve in the house of God. And we feel like it's a privilege to be able to do that. And so we talk a lot about door holding around here. And the reason is because we feel like door holders have had the opportunity to be inside with Jesus. They've had that moment of being with Jesus where they've really seen him and he's transformed something about their life. And when that thing transformed inside of them, the thing that they wanted to do most was go back to the door and open it up so that someone else could see the same thing.
So great.
And that's what we're doing here. We've had the opportunity, all of us on this stage and most of us in this room who serve with Passion City have seen and experienced something of Jesus, and he's totally transformed us. And because of that transformation, we cannot wait, honestly, to get back to the door so that we can open it back up so that someone who hasn't yet seen can have the opportunity to not have to figure out how to get inside, but can have an open doorway to the heart of Jesus. And so it's our privilege to be able to do that. It's not something we have to do, it's something we get to do. And we talk a lot around here. There's in the hallway, you'll see the words that we may. That we may. Not that we have to, but that we may. That we get the privilege of having that opportunity is huge around here. So door holding is massive in our culture.
Yeah, just the difference between that and the word volunteer makes an immediate shift in your mind. What we think of as growing up as volunteers. I love it.
Yeah, we talk sometimes about, volunteer is about signing up and showing up. You know what I'm talking about? We need 13 volunteers to do X, Y, Z, and you get 8 hands, and so you start pointing at people, 9, 10, and then what people show up because they have to show up because they signed up. You know what I'm talking about? So we signed up, so now we got to show up. And that's just not really what we're looking for at Passion City Church. We ask more of our door holders than probably anybody other church might ask of them, because why would you give less? Why would you give less to the house of God than you're giving anywhere else in your life? And so we don't want people's leftover time. We don't want their minimal margins. We don't want them to have this attitude of, well, I signed up, so here I am. Don't you feel great? I signed up. I'm here. I showed up. I even showed up. Some people signed up, didn't show up. I signed up and showed up, and we're like, that's awesome. We have the privilege of building up the house of Jesus and opening the door for the whole world to come and experience what God has done. So whether you're literally holding a door or running a camera like someone is right now, or leading a song, we're all door holders, every single one of us. And so we've adopted this mentality, and I think it's a game changer for our whole house. I'm sorry, I jumped in on you, Christy.
No, I was just going to say, I think if you just make it about the words, then it's just going to be about the words. But I think that you've got to gather together and, pray and just seek the Lord on what your language is. It doesn't have to be those specific words. I think that's just what God gave us for this house. But it's not just about the words. The words are important because it triggers an attitude of your heart.
Yeah.
And I think when we come into the green room and beforehand and we're going to pray together and gather, it's not just about the words. It's about coming with that confession on your life. And otherwise, we have, at first it was just, like you're saying, at first it just took us a while because we would poke fun and correct each other and still, I say service and, those kind of things. But, and again, to just remind myself, it's not necessarily about the word. It's just that the word is triggering my heart all over again. When you come into the house after a week and of, whatever you've gone through, it's just coming together again and that confession of your hearts and bringing unity to your team by speaking the same language. I think it is important.
And when you're creating culture, it has to be intentional. I think that many of you probably think that we began Passion City Church and it was just, we just start the song and every hand is up and people are just, they're just pouring out their hearts to God and they're just like, please, let's sing more. Chris, that was only 40 minutes. Let's sing an hour and a half. Let's go. Louis, preach 2 hours. You're probably thinking that's what it is. And oh my gosh, we've been through some funerals. It's just people looking at us and you're thinking, and so maybe you think, well, that happens in my church. It'd be easy to lead here. And you have to create it. We've had to create it. This has been 5 years now of creating. And
I said 4. I think I was trying to forget that first year. There's a couple,
yeah.
There's a couple of those Sunday nights where we were like, where'd the buses let out? Where did these people come from?
Should
does
we move?
anybody know Jesus? Maybe we should start there.
So I think that's good, man. Everybody take a deep breath because you probably feel the same. Anybody feel the same about your place? I don't know. Maybe all of you are that way and we aren't. But maybe. So it's a process and it doesn't happen overnight. And you have to create it. You have to be intentional about it because you are creating the culture, or you're going to let everybody else create it for you. And so as leadership, it's being united in that. And so some of the just real practical ways we started doing that is realizing that. We had at the beginning when we were gathering, we had a lot of people that would drive in from all over places to come because we had started this, started these gatherings and started coming and things started happening. And so they would be lined up early in the day and they would get here and be on the very front and they're thinking, I would see, we're going to a concert, or this is awesome. This is a concert, and so it's completely mentality. The whole front, I felt of the church was this mentality of it's a concert. They're here to watch and here to check it out. And oh wow, that's Chris, that's Christy. Oh my goodness, it's Christian. Oh my gosh, that's Louis. They're all just checking it out. I'm noticing people are taking pictures when we're playing. I'm this is so weird. And I'm how do we change this? And we just started taking the people who are already kind of in that stream of our culture. A lot of the door holders. We're it's not just the people on this stage that are leading worship for the day. All of us together. And when we talk about in the green room, there's 60 people back there. and all of us together today leading. I might be the one starting the song, but or all leading us. So we would just put them up in the front and say, "Excuse me, I know you waited since 5 in the morning, but you're gonna have to like sit in the third row," because this is the kind of the culture we want to create, and like these are the people we want other people to see. This is what we're after. We're not after people just coming, looking, and taking pictures, or people just coming and staring, or just we're after. And so it's just putting that, and we have our youth come in the evening gatherings, and so we have them up front. When we play our music, all of the youth are just packed into here. You can imagine it smells interesting and all kinds of stuff because they're like, I mean, it's all down anywhere on the sides, everything. It's just they're crammed in here, and it's so much fun. It's like I love playing at those gatherings because it's like there's just so much energy, you know, and it's infectious. You know, the rest other people are coming in just kind of checking it out, and I think that's wonderful. You know, because everybody's at different places. Yeah. We don't come in and say, "Oh, you're not raising your hands, you're not part of this church." It's like, that is so lame because everybody's at different places. And by the grace of God, I have no idea what's going on in that person's life. So that's not what we're saying at all. Mm-hmm. We're just saying that it's infectious when other people come and they may be checking out who Jesus is and see these other people going, "Man, what are they connected to? What in the world are they excited about?" And I think that's kind of how one way we're being intentional about a culture we're creating.
That's so good. And you know, this morning there was a really
Sorry.
I want to do that at the end of every one of my
Wow.
notes. You know, this morning, did you notice this morning there was that really amazing group of people right at the front? They were really into it. You were frustrated because you got here really early to get that seat, didn't you? And did you have some frustration at some point when those late comers just got right in front of you and clogged up your view just a little bit? That was our choir, and we had them come down and get in front of you and clog your view up on purpose because they were leading today. They just weren't up here. They led up here last night, and they led down here today. They were leading both times. Yeah, isn't that great? And so some of you have people who have assigned seats at your church, and they may not be the people you want in those seats. Because Chris and I'll tell you, you can go do an arena full of people, but if you get the wrong 9 people on the front row, it can affect the whole thing. It can affect the whole thing. And so we're trying to be strategic. It's not hype. It's not like we're trying to hype something up. So we're just trying to get real authentic people who love Jesus in the right places. And when we talk about that, we made door holding, really wanting to bring something. We're not asking people to be fake, because all of us have issues every single time. But even when we do, it's still true that Jesus is Jesus. He's still alive. No matter whether we had a long weekend or something's going on in our family, he's still alive. And therefore, we can still bring all of our heart to him. This language thing, you know, we've tried to get around a lot of ways because we got a bunch of people, Chris is talking about showing up, and they keep telling us, you know, I like your sanctuary. This is really awesome. This is a cool sanctuary. We're like, oh, yeah, no, it's not a sanctuary. It's an auditorium. I was out in the vestibule after the service this morning, and I'm like, wow, you know, we don't have a vestibule, you know, and we don't have services. We have gatherings. I came to church, to your church. We call it 515. Well, why do you call it that? Because the address and the church in the building, and that helps us remember that. So if we ever move, we won't go, yeah, we moved from the church. We know we're moving the church. You see, so this is all these little ways of thinking. So we have a really special song. We haven't done it a lot here. I don't even know if Lift we should do. You know how you have those private songs just for your family, you know? We have one of those. What do you think, Chris?
Absolutely.
It's called Atmosphere. It's pretty awesome. We have a couple times a year here. We gather our door holders and appreciate them. We give them door holder awards, which are big doorknobs, and door handles.
They are.
And we celebrate, we cast vision, we talk about things the rest of our house doesn't know about. If you're not a door holder, you can't come. It's full-on worship like this. And Matt, you're leaving us here. Can you do a little atmosphere? Jeff Scott, are you around? You might could probably help us with this. Can you come out? Can you say hi to Jeff Scott? I hate to put you on the spot, but can somebody get Jeff some power? And Christy, can you help him out with this, maybe?
Yeah, try to remember.
Okay, here we go. This is going to be awesome. I know this is going to get ready to be moved, okay? This is about to change your life right here, what's going to happen. It's going to be powerful. Please, no video recording of this, and we do not want this going up on social media. Thank you.
You
You see it on our walls. We try to get it right. It's what we named this night. It's atmosphere. Instead of services, we're holding gatherings in the auditorium and not the sanctuary. We don't volunteer. We're door holders here. Sometimes we ride a shuttle, sometimes we stand in line. We've changed our gathering hours, but we'll adjust in time. It may be hard to fathom, even an uphill climb, but if we lean together, the shit will come in time. We go into the oval to stand. There's not a bulletin in your head. We have a way to tell what's going on. It's called Twitter. It's pretty easy. Get to know it. Follow me. Sometimes we ride a shuttle, sometimes we stand in line. We never take the offering, it is our giving time. It may be hard to fathom, even an uphill climb. These open planning center, but please do not decline. If you say sanctuary, we'll say don't say that here. It's nothing personal, it's just our atmosphere. You guys are culture makers, we'll shape this place for years. You've turned this old home depot into the house that's here. You turned this old home depot into our atmosphere.
Next Passion album, title track, Atmosphere. You know, that was so fun. Our door holders freaked out. They did exactly what you did. They loved every second of that because it was like, we've all been there. We were all, you know, all of our door holders on a Sunday, for the most part, are riding a shuttle, almost all of them, because we have a limited parking, and so if you door hold, with door holding, you get to ride a shuttle. And so there's just an extra layer even of that we may, even in that. And they're door holding for you this weekend. They are loving it. They are here just serving and standing in the gap for us, and they're absolutely loving it. It's pretty amazing. Culture doesn't just evolve to the place you want it to be. You have to be intentional about it. You have to understand that a bunch of people coming into your worship team are all bringing the culture from their old worship team. And if that's not what you want, then you have to set a new culture. And you have to be dedicated to that track as God leads you to be the culture A. Because you can't set a culture you're not. So you got to be the culture A. And to let your being be making the culture down the road. That's pretty amazing. Chris, we talked last night about leading people to Jesus. But we also talked about being psalmist. And just because you're leading people to encounters with Jesus is not a good reason to not really be excellent in everything else that you do. And so we how are we holding that together? We want people to meet Jesus. That's the bottom line. Yeah. But we don't want to just, have train wreck and not have guitars work and stuff like that
Right.
all the time either.
Right, exactly. I think that, about being excellent is such it's such a huge value in this house and in everything we do. We don't go strive for perfection. We don't really call that from people because I can't call it. I'm not perfect, and none of us are. But we want to strive for excellence in everything we do. And even after our gatherings, like in the morning, we'll get around, Louis, myself, I'm leading, or Christian or Christy, whoever's leading at the time. We'll get with Jonathan or whoever's kind of overseeing the day, and we'll just be open about it and say, hey, what did you think about that? How did you think about this? Or what did you think about this? And Louis is he's pretty amazing. Like, he'll just say, what did you guys feel about, how many times has your pastor done this? What do you guys feel about the talk? Was there any points that didn't make any sense, or like I should really, this is stronger? And I think it's just always trying to be really excellent and looking at being open. It's just really being open-handed about it, and it's not like that's that team's thing, that's that team's thing, and it cannot be touched. It's like we're all open-handed, like we're at the end of the day, we're trying to lead people to Jesus. So are we doing that the best way we can? Is it most effective? Because how are people receiving it? You were out there while I was leading. How are people receiving that? You were out there while I was teaching. How do you think people are receiving that? And that's a big deal for us.
I think it's important too if you don't happen to have a pastor that would say that to you or just say, can you speak in? I'm inviting you to speak in. I think it's important for you to prayerfully just model it with your team, and even in front of your pastor, just go to him and say, hey, is there anything that I could do different in the next gathering? Or, do you want to speak in to this set list? I've got this, here's what I'm thinking. And even your team, I think Chris even will do that with the team. Just say, hey, what are you feeling for this Sunday? What, you have any songs that are stirring in you? And then here's what I'm feeling, speak into it. And I think it's just about, if you're frustrated in that, I think it's just so good to continue to just prayerfully model it with just an amazing attitude, and keep that invitation open all the time in your own life, and that will hopefully spill out.
It's awesome. I would just add one thing to that. I think the people that are most excellent in what they do are also the people that are most prepared. And we have a team and a culture in our family that's preparedness. And I think our family and our team of people are known around the world even somewhat as being some of the leaders that people really look to for modeling that. And what's most amazing about that is that there's so much humility in that process, that none of them feel like, because the world might perceive that they're supposed to be leading in a certain way, that they are going to hold tightly to that. But instead, I think the more God elevates them, the more open-handed they become with what he's given them, because really it's about stewardship, right? All of us are given different levels of stewardship in our lives. Some of us, God says, are given a very little bit, but we're still accountable with what we do with that little. And some of us are given an awful lot, and we're very accountable for what we do with the much. And that's true here. Sometimes people perceive us as being given much. I think it's not so much the amount of what you're given, but what you do with what you've been given and how you steward that. And in our house, the culture of our stewardship says, God has given me these songs. What do you think? How do you feel like God might use these songs to help lead people? And everyone has an opportunity who's earned that place to speak into that process. And so if, like Christy said, if that's not the culture of your house and your house doesn't value that, then start being that. You start being that. You start being the one that says, you know what, I'm not just the worship leader and I come with my 12 minutes and that's what I do, but I'm open-handed with what God's leading me to. And I'm saying, you know what, I'm available to the process and I'd love to be refined so that I can be excellent in what I do. So I just think that's super important.
Yeah, and I think so much of that review process and the way that kind of Sundays happen around here happens a lot because we do view ourselves as a team. It's not like there's this the senior pastor and then the worship leader, or the worship leader and then the senior pastor, or any kind of dynamic like that. I remember a couple years back whenever we were moving around and we were renting venues and setting stuff up. Setting stuff, it's a little bit of a hard memory for me because it's kind of a disaster of the story I'm about to tell. We're setting stuff up every Sunday. And we had a couple Sundays where we kind of had little moments like the guitar not working, but times about 10 in a row. And the climax of the disasters was we had this big screen that we normally have up in here and have up at a bunch of events. We do a widescreen, and one of the projectors on it died about 10 minutes before we started. Literally, the thing exploded and melted down. And so, yeah.
Literally?
It would literally, like we couldn't put the projector back in the box because the plugs were melted to it, so it was bad. So we start the gathering, and we have half of the lyrics. So like, how great is our God is just, rate is our God. No how. And so it was bad. We had half of Louis' face on the screen. It was really, really bad. And we didn't have time to fix it. So we get through the end of it, and I remember Louis and I had a conversation a couple days later, and he said, it was so empowering to me. He said, hey, there's 3 things that have to happen to make Sunday happen. He said, I have to come through the door ready to teach, ready to lead, ready to give 110% to what happens here on Sundays. He said, Chris has to come through the door, whoever's leading the musical section of the worship, ready to give 110% of what's happening Sunday. And he said, and production has to come through the door ready to give 110% of what's happening. And so it's not like this dichotomy of there's the production people in the back and in some room hidden in the back where they're just kind of trying to make sure the lights come on right and kind of, we're here to serve you, whatever you want, we'll do it. There's definitely a huge culture of we want to be able to do whatever we can to make everything happen. But it's equal in the sense that everybody has to come through the door ready all the time. And it's not just like the production people can't not be ready. The worship leader can't not be ready. Louis can't not be ready to teach. And it was really empowering, even though it was kind of a big disaster, because I just realized, hey, this is a really important role. And it's not less important than another one. It was a huge culture thing for our team whenever it happened.
So cool.
Yeah, we really believe, too, that mistakes are not disqualifications, but they're growth spurts. And so I think because we perceive that when stuff like that happens and stuff melts down, instead of overreacting and that becoming a disqualification, who was in charge of that? I mean, if that melted down, then there's somebody was in charge of that. Who was in charge of that? And that you're disqualified. Instead, it's like, you know what? This is an opportunity.
Although I do think we fired that guy.
Well, I'll tell a story on
Just
Jonathan.
kidding.
Let me just tell one
Kidding.
story. Let me just tell one story.
kidding.
I was scared this might come
I don't
up.
know if I should tell this. Jonathan, why don't you tell the story? Because it's better coming from you. But there's a story early on with Jonathan. He had just graduated from college. I had
Last
given
weekend.
him my most valued possession, which is my computer. And I had asked him, I was having a little bit of a glitchy problem with it. And I said, Jonathan, do you think you can fix this? And he said, I got it. So we were traveling together. So I said, well, why don't you just take my computer at this point and you can fix it and give it back to me later. So he did take it. He left it on the top of his car. And he drove quite a distance from the airport with it on the top of his car until it wasn't on the top of his car anymore. And then he showed up at the place that he was supposed to bring it to me. And when he got there, I think he realized, I don't really have your computer with me right now. So he came in and described to me that he thought maybe he had left my computer somewhere. So,
Then you melted down.
well, no, it was a chance for a disqualification, right? You just lost one of my most valued possessions. Instead, it was a growth moment. So I said to Jonathan, here's what I said. I said, well, you'll go find my computer. My computer wasn't actually backed up, which is not Jonathan's problem, it was mine. But the value of the things that were on it and the details about it couldn't be left somewhere because there was a lot of information on there that I didn't want someone else to have. So Jonathan drove the streets of Atlanta from the airport until he found my computer. Now, Jonathan, why don't you tell us what shape it was in when you got it?
Let's just say that a 12-inch laptop was about the size of an iPhone. And that the hard drive was like a maraca, and it was bad.
It was awesome.
It was like the keyboard was folded over like a little accordion. It had been run over by a semi-truck, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so Jonathan in that moment, Jonathan is on our team. He doesn't have a super major, vital, what everybody would consider prestigious role on our team, but he was on our team. And so that was a moment for us to decide, you know what, you're either disqualified because of your mistake or you're going to grow from that. And Jonathan leads our events team, our production at Passion at the Dome. Did you hear that? So God has possibilities for your team. The most important thing is that you help them through those disqualifications so that they can come and grow and become all that God intends for them to be. So it's just a good story for that. We have lots of those.
So shifting gears a little bit, there's so many stories we talk about excellence, but shifting gears a little bit. So raising up a team. Obviously, we're growing as a family. We've got multiple gatherings now. We used to lead all day long, whoever was leading. Now we got a morning team and an evening team. We got people leading students, people leading Passion Kids. How are we raising up people, and how are we pouring into people? Can we talk about that for a little bit? Because I know everybody here is thinking we need to raise up some people. If you feel like it ends with you, then you need to recast vision. So if you've sort of gotten into the position and think, I finally got here and I'm going to stay here for a long, long time, then you're missing the heart of Jesus and missing the heart of the church, because Jesus is always looking to raise up people and to lift up people and to build up people. And human nature is kind of to get in that spot and like hold it down for as long as possible till you retire. And Jesus' nature is to look around and try to call out the gifts of other people and raise them up and pour into them and let them become all that he wants them to be.
We have an awesome team. That's how I can say it, is that is not just satisfied with what's happening right now, and it's going amazing, and not just satisfied with that. And Christy, just give her so much just props here, because she came to me and said, I really need to talk to you, something so much on my heart. And she's like, I just have such a burden for all the girls that are leading. I just want to lead them. I don't feel like we're really discipling them great. I think we're just coming and singing, and I don't know where their hearts are. I don't know where we're leading them. And it was really challenging to me, and Christy's taken that up, and I'll let her speak to that. And John takes up with the guys, and we meet monthly with our team. About once a quarter with our whole team, and Louis kind of speaks into, like what he did last night. Here's the vision. Here's the culture of worship that we're creating, and it's amazing to see already the growth. And we have and Brett, who is leading to my left. Amazing at bringing up the high schoolers and just pouring into them and pouring into our next generation of leaders, and it's just so good. But I know Christy, this is like her passion. And so you just speak just quickly to it.
Yeah, well, I think we grew so fast as a church, and then all of a sudden you look up and it looks enormous and almost like, what are we doing, to raise up these people? And I know it's happening with community groups and pockets of people, but I think what happened to me was that I let that sort of overwhelm me for a while, just to think, okay, here's all the things we're not doing, or who's doing that, and I didn't really know who was doing what. But what the Lord finally brought me to was, here's what you can do, and here's what I have called you to, and here's where your voice in the body matters right now in this season of your life. And I felt such a sense of urgency for it to start happening, and I just said, Chris, we need to call together the girls. So any girl that's leading on a stage, which would be Passion Kids, sometimes even in Bloom, our little children, and then students, and then on this stage, and just had such an urgency because the Lord, I think you said it a while ago, Shelley, but just that the more he gives you, the more he will cause you to lead from a place of humility and brokenness, not woundedness, but brokenness, because it's that constant need and that constant sort of pressure cooker when you are meeting with Jesus. He's also using circumstances in your life and pain. You know what it's like. It's like when you dig deeper with him, it becomes like this pressure cooker. And that's not just for you to keep. That's for your team. That's for the sharing. And I remember when I first told Chris, I wanted to do this, and I was talking to his wife, Lauren, and she was like, if you want them to bleed, you're going to have to hemorrhage in those moments. Like, if you want them to share and open up, you're going to have to come to them with humility and start sharing out of your own experiences in your own life. And so, we just did what we could. We found a Bible study. Honestly, that can get you hung up for a long time too. It wasn't, the Lord was like, this is not about any certain kind of material. This is just about the gathering of your team and you pouring into them and leading them along. So it wasn't about us mastering some sort of Bible study. It was just, I wanted them to know, and I say that to them probably every time. I call them my girls, but when they come to my house, I'm like, again, we're not here to master this, we're here to go to the master together and seek him and love each other and share. And it's been honestly just so transforming for my own life as a leader. And I feel, honestly, a different anointing over my leadership because of what I'm doing off the stage, not necessarily on. And I think that being on is just it's another vessel that God uses. The music and the leading worship is just another way that sort of I have the ability and maybe just the platform to speak into their lives, because that's something that they aspire to do. And it's been life-changing. It's been life-changing for our team. And even just one of our girls, Christina, I was talking to her in the hall, and I was just sharing with her, what all God has done in my heart, even since just January. And she just looked at me and she was like, it's so cool because you went through all of that for us. It was not just for you, it was for the sharing. And I think that's just that constant flow of you being with Jesus and you being squeezed out, and him is what you're offering. Jesus is what you're continually offering, but also just a place for them to gather together, to be together. And there's something just even amazing in that. So it's been transformation.
So great. So much more I want you to say about that. We're out of time, but Christy's going to be leading a breakout later in the afternoon. She's going to be talking a little bit about that in the context of some other things. Maddie's going to be leading or co-leading a breakout, right?
Me and Nathan Knuckles.
With Mr. Knuckles
Our
on
good-looking husband.
some music directing, and you can talk a little bit about how you make all this feel like a beautiful, seamless tapestry. And most people that come here on a weekend to one of our gatherings in the auditorium here at 5:15 don't really notice that, but you make it work. And then Chris and I are going to be hanging out together this afternoon. You get to hear a lot more from Chris as well, and some other amazing breakouts going on. But can we just say thanks to this amazing group right here for coming and sharing today? Thank you guys so much. Awesome.